Hello everyone, my name is Denise Ho. I am a singer and pro-democracy activist from Hong Kong. It is my honor to address the 12th Geneva Summit for Human Rights and Democracy before an audience of diplomats, human rights activists, students, and concerned citizens. The last time I spoke in Geneva was just across the street at the UN Human Rights Council, where I was repeatedly interrupted by China. I'm glad that today, I know I can speak without interruption. For a long and unforgettable period of 6 months, June 2019 to December 2019, the world witnessed the very persistent fight of Hong Kongers, our fight for freedom. During those days, we were met with more than 16,000 rounds of tear gas, rubber bullets, and other so-called non-lethal weapons from the police. Water cannons filled with blue dye fired off at innocent pedestrians. People shot in the eye lost eyesight permanently. Live rounds were fired at point-blank range into the chests of 2 teenage boys. 2 universities were besieged. And yet, people still fought on. In this leaderless fight against the biggest and most powerful dictatorship in the world, it was the young and fearless force that sustained us and amazed the world. Our youngsters, equipped with only the bare minimum of protection, with these makeshift gear made out of cardboard boxes and foam swimming boards, ran onto the very front lines to protect the city from a steady erosion of our freedoms. Fortunately, after these long months of protests and unbearable police violence, we won the district elections in November with a landslide victory. More than 80% of the seats were won by pro-democratic candidates, with nearly 60% of the votes. The silent majority, as the government loves to phrase it, is no longer silent, and they are standing on our side. Despite this encouraging result, and even with the retraction of the extradition bill that triggered the whole movement, for us, the fight is still not won. With more than 6,000 people arrested, and even more so severely injured, we are now dealing with the aftermath of this prolonged movement. Hundreds, maybe even thousands of youth have fled the country, ending up in Taiwan, Australia, and Canada in fear of political repercussions. Some others have been refused bail and have since October been awaiting trial in the cold cell blocks. Not to forget all these mysterious deaths and suicides that appeared during these 6 months, with a suspiciously high number of bodies, sometimes totally naked, found in the sea, demonstrating the recklessness of this regime. In more recent days, the incompetence of our government, namely the Chief Executive Carrie Lam, has been exposed through how they have been dealing with the coronavirus situation. Stubbornly refusing to close off borders, failing to regulate sanitary supplies, therefore creating chaos and fear among the people. With a Hong Kong government that only responds to the communist government, which refuses to listen to the strong voices of the people, the one country, 2 systems is doomed to fail terribly. My own story started back in 2012, when I confronted this facade of freedom. I realized that our legislative systems were working only in favor of the government. I then chose to come out as the first openly gay female singer in Hong Kong and China, in hopes of pushing forward LGBTQ rights. You see, celebrities in Asia, oddly enough, are taught to keep themselves out of politics. In this era of self-censorship, people, myself included at that time, tiptoed around sensitive issues, especially those concerning this mega power that is China. That moment of personal truth made all the difference for the coming years. I started to understand the negative impacts of a government that fails to serve the people. On 28th September 2014, when the first tear gas bomb was fired into these peaceful crowds of Hong Kong citizens, I decided to step further out of my silence and chose to stand together with the people. I was arrested at the end of the umbrella movement, and this decision changed my whole career, even my whole life. As a result, I was banned from China, blacklisted from all the corporate brands, and I had to terminate my contracts with my management and music label. Luckily, I was able to rebuild my own system, and I learned to do things on my own. With my team, we even launched a crowd sponsorship campaign for my concert in 2016, with 50,000 tickets sold out within hours. Then came June 2019. 3 days after the historical Million People Anti-Extradition Bill march in Hong Kong, crowds gathered around the legislative buildings, demanding a response from the government. I remember myself roaming around the outskirts of the crowds, believing that it was relatively safer to be where I was standing. Suddenly, riot police with weapons appeared and closed off all sides. In a matter of minutes, all hell broke loose. Tear gas, rubber bullets were fired. Injured people ran towards us, and I found myself helping out, rinsing off the eyes and the faces. That was the first time I ever felt the horrible effects of this chemical weapon. Students and women around me, totally unarmed, pushed and scrambled, trying to leave from the building behind us. And suddenly I found myself only 3 meters away from the charging line of riot police. Acting on my instincts, I tried negotiating for a halt so that people behind me could leave in peace. Despite my calm exterior, I was actually trembling inside. But at that moment, I knew I had to do it. Because, as the saying goes, if not me, then who? Along the way, you come to understand that courage is not something that you plan for. Things that happen at a split second drive us to capabilities that were previously unknown. Despite the fears present at this given moment, you overcome it with this habit of always doing right by your conscience. And so the rest is history. These courageous young people who were in the front lines have been doing exactly that, believing in their actions, responding to the conscience. They sacrificed their futures for our city, yet it is not in vain. Fighting for these selfless causes, they have awakened the city, and they have brought hope to those who had already given up. In reality, this is not only a fight for Hong Kong, but a very global fight against a dictatorship that is inflicting its influence in the whole world. This dictatorship that is China. Again, with the spreading of the coronavirus, we can finally see for ourselves the destructive impacts of a superpower regime that does not tell the truth. By withholding facts, silencing and persecuting whistleblowers, and even exercising their powers to silence global organizations such as the WHO and the UN, they have effectively worsened the situation into an epidemic, something that could have been prevented if we, as a global community, had been consciously monitoring these violations and stepping up to halt China's immense power. With the globalization of the world, we are one, and we must act as one. Turning a blind eye where it is convenient, pretending that these violations of human rights happening on the other side of the world are things that does not concern our well-being, is something that would eventually catch up on you. As Hong Kongers have shown the world, it is this power, the power of the ordinary, that can make the difference. Whoever and wherever you are, by stepping up to these injustices, voicing out your concerns, however small and unimportant they might seem, you can be the one to trigger the most unexpected of changes. The one person who steps up to the situation, who gives their all in the most desperate of times, might not necessarily be the one to see it through, but he or she shall pass on the aspiration to create change onto many more generations to follow. And that might be our surest bet of making good in the world. Thank you.